Hey, Browns fans. Special tournament with you from New Orleans inside the Caesar Sportsbook Superdome. Excited to be here, or the Caesar Superdome, I should say. We are excited to be here with you for your coverage of the Cleveland Browns here all throughout today as they get ready for kickoff with the New Orleans Saints. I can tell you, maybe many of you are actually here with me because as I've walked this city, as I've trudged through the French Quarter, I have seen a lot of Browns fans here in town. We know Browns fans travel well. They are certainly going to be inside this building today, one of the loudest venues in the NFL, and it certainly feels like there's going to be a lot of dog barking going on. So looking forward to covering the game with you guys all throughout the day. We do have a couple of stories to touch on leading up to kickoff today. As yesterday, the Browns announced that Jedrick Wills was going to be out, added to that injury report as he tweaked the knee that's been bothering him all throughout the season. You also had the news of Mike Hall Jr., who popped up on the injury report midweek, going on the IR, which means he's going to miss the next 4 games. His injury, a knee as well. Kevin Stefanski talked about it late in the week, something that he injured during practice, during a drill. And obviously, it was bad enough they felt they had to put him on the IR. Kevin Stefanski did say on Friday that he was not anticipating at this time, or they did not want to venture into, I guess, making any sort of estimates on whether or not he's going to need surgery. But at this juncture, he's just on the IR, and obviously what that means is he's going to miss at least the next 4 games for the Browns. I think it's a pretty significant note, though, because Jim Schwartz, in the absence of Zadarius Smith, this being the first game without him, as we know, uh, Jim Schwartz talked about this week, like using just a cast of guys at that opposite the defensive end spot opposite of Myles Garrett. It's going to start with Obo Kwankwo and Isaiah McGuire, but he even mentioned Mike Hall as somebody who could kick out to the outside if needed. So maybe a little more strain on that group. Sam Kamara was signed to the active roster yesterday, so he's likely to be a guy that sees some work there. But yeah, that's something they're going to have to sort of navigate the rest of the way here, particularly without Zadarius Smith out there, and we'll see what kind of who emerges in that role opposite of Myles Garrett, sort of in a supporting cast spot. It'll be one of the more interesting questions from today, as will Jameis Winston's return to New Orleans, where he spent the previous 4 seasons, as we all know, before coming to Cleveland. Jameis didn't talk this week about it being sort of like a revenge factor or anything involved in this one, which makes sense for Jameis. He's not that kind of guy. But he did talk about just the player that he's become because of his time spent here with the Saints organization, particularly under Sean Payton and Drew Brees, who are both probably destined at some point to find themselves in the Hall of Fame down the line here, and just how they've helped him in terms of his preparation, the way that you get ready for a game, and made him a better player overall. That doesn't mean Jameis is the perfect player, and we saw, I think, firsthand the full Jameis Winston experience in his first 2 starts. First game, he throws 3 touchdown passes, looks great. Second game, 3 interceptions, doesn't look so good. If he can maybe split the difference here, and maybe, I mean, you don't want any turnovers, but if he splits the difference and he's able to at least give you something today, productive against the Saints defense that is not very good, then I feel pretty good about the chance that the opportunity that the Browns have to sort of win this game and start off the second half of the season on a high, even if at this point we kind of can read the tea leaves and understand the playoffs probably aren't in the cards for this team. But they've said this week, Kevin Stefanski made it clear, like their number one goal is still winning. And I think that's part of why Jameis Winston is still the starting quarterback, is once you move to DTR, it's more about evaluation and seeing what you have in him as a player. So he gets a chance to play against his former team today. Heard some chatter sort of walking in about some people who work for the Saints talking about, hopefully he throws a few to the Saints defense, which is something they're pretty familiar with the interceptions that he's thrown throughout his career. He can be very sporadic in that way, in the way that he plays. So we'll see how it all shakes out. But certainly a storyline in this one that is worth monitoring and worth following, and that we'll be following all day long. And I'm sure Jameis will have some interesting things to say, as he always does after this one, if they come away with a victory. Along those lines of coming away with a victory, I am in our prediction piece, which is up at NFL or si.com/NFL/Browns. I did pick the Browns to win this game. Part of my reasoning is Kevin Stefanski's teams being 3-1 off of a bye week. He generally has his teams pretty prepared for this one. It's a Saints team that, like the Browns, is not very good. There was a lot of sort of joking conversations going on with Browns fans this weekend just about how it's kind of the battle of who's the better 7-loss team at this point. And I do think the Browns are a more talented team right now, especially with some of the injuries that the Saints are dealing with. But they're going to have to account for Alvin Kamara. He's been tremendous. Their leading receiver and rusher on this team. They do have to account for Cameron Jordan up front, like on the defensive line. So there will be some problems that the Saints can present. But I do think the Browns come away with a win today. I don't remember off the top of my head what my prediction was. I said maybe 27-24. I think it was a 3-point win. You can fact check me on that if you head on over to si.com/NFL/Browns. You'll find all of our content throughout the day over there as well at si.com/NFL/Browns. We'll have in-game injury updates if there are any, all sorts of post-game coverage as well. And of course, for those of you maybe tuning in right now on the Cleveland Browns on SI YouTube channel, we'll be back post-game with some live reaction to everything that unfolds today out on the field behind me. And we'll also have some other content for you, press conferences from players, coaches, etc. So be sure to stick around and stay tuned for all that. We are about 2 hours away from kickoff between the Saints and the Browns. I look forward to talking to you guys post-game. Until then, keep on following along with all the coverage of your Cleveland Browns at si.com/NFL/Browns.